Alfred Whitehead, the renowned mathematician and philosopher, believed everything is defined by its relationship to everything else. Some of the atoms in your body are like to have once belonged to Shakespeare, and others came from the Buddha, and others from Genghis Khan. But for now, trillions of these atoms have somehow assembled themselves into you. The writer, Bill Bryson, notes, why atoms take this trouble is a bit of a puzzle. Being you is not a gratifying experience at the atomic level. For all their devoted attention, your atoms do not actually care about you. Indeed, they don't even know that you are there. They don't even know that they are there. They are mindless particles, after all, not even themselves alive. If we were to pull ourselves apart with a tweezer and make a big pile of our pieces, nothing and all that atomic dust would resemble us as humans. None of those pieces make sense out of their context of their relationships to each other. I might argue, and frankly, I have the microphone, so I'm going to argue that nothing in all of existence makes sense out of the context of relationship. Nothing, absolutely nothing that we have on this planet has any meaning or even any use if it's not in relationship with something else. At the very basic levels, even hydrogen needs to be in relationship with oxygen for it to become water, without which there is no life at all. It's the old adage, if a tree falls in the forest and no one can hear it, does it make a sound? Another question I would always ask in school is, who cares? If no one hears it, the sound is irrelevant. We create meaning with and for each other only in a relationship with one another. And for the record, I believe that the tree does make a sound because all of the other trees are there to hear it. And it's with this lens that I begin the sermon on gratitude. I preach about gratitude twice a year because gratitude is an accessible spiritual practice, right? It's free. You can practice it at any time, in any place. It can be quick or it can take a long time. It can be practiced alone or with others, with one or two others, or a whole congregation of people. It's also strangely and nearly universally effective. Its simplicity defies so much of what we assume to be spiritual practice, a term that conjures up sitting very still for very long periods of time, or sacrificing things we enjoy, or even things we need to live. Or at the very least, the spiritual discipline suggests the commitment of a daily devotion. Gratitude, on the other hand, is ours for the taking, no study or suffering necessary. Gratitude is a spiritual discipline that begins by understanding our history. It's a look backward, a thanking all those who went before us, who created the possibility of this moment. All those atoms that make up our lives as they are right now. It is a recognition of our dependence on the people and the land and the animals, a circle so large it's nearly impossible to consider in its entirety. And can you name the atoms of your life, the interdependent particles that have brought you to where you are? For every thread, there's an infinite number of other threads attached. I'm grateful, for instance, for my education. My education is dependent upon all of the teachers, all of the lesson plans, all of the educations of the teachers so they could create the lesson plans, all of the books I read, the books all of the teachers read, all of the writers who wrote all of the books, all of the books read by all of the educators who built the whole system in which I went to school from kindergarten through graduate school. My education is due in part to other students and their parents and grandparents and all the scholarship money and donations of land and vision going back centuries, maintained through the years so I could find myself in those classrooms learning the things I needed to know. It is nearly too big to contemplate. I've often wondered what would happen if I could just be in a room, like covered in blackboards, if I could try and trace all of the factors, all of the piles of atoms that brought me to a particular moment. For just a few seconds, conjure for yourself all of the things that led you to this moment for which you are grateful, noting the profound interdependence necessary to bring you to right now. The discipline of gratitude also opens us to the future, a future for which we are responsible. It can be called an ethic of gratitude. This ethic, having recognized our dependence on the universe to bring us where we are and to support us now in all we do, calls us to greater accountability to future generations. In the same way, every action of every person before us influenced our ability to be where we are, our own actions are not happening in a vacuum, but as part of this interdependent web stretching out not only behind, but also before us. Our choices, our words, our offerings to the universe become part of someone else's reality. They too are caught in this web, are players in someone else's ethic of gratitude. What are the actions we take that can create ripples of gratitude in the future? If your great-grandchild is transgender, they will be grateful for the actions you take today to protect their basic human rights. If you have children, they will be grateful for the ways you fought to mitigate climate change. Women around the world will be grateful if we normalize gender equity. LGBTQ people in the American South, in a generation from now, will be grateful if we use our votes to protect them. Our ethic of gratitude reminds us that we are actors in this interconnected web, just as those who went before us were and are those we share this planet with today. We are profoundly dependent, all atoms in relationship. And every dip into gratitude is a reminder. Every gratitude list requires others. Gratitude is not just a thank you, but a deep understanding of how desperately we need one another. It's an acknowledgement of our place in the universe, of our interdependent connection with all things, without which we would not be who we are. We are dependent on the doctors and nurses who care for us, on the builders who constructed the structures we live and work in, or the people who created and clean the streets. We are as dependent on the food we eat as we are on the people who sow, grow, water, weed, and harvest that food. We're equally dependent on the sun, the soil, the rain. Intertwined in our mind-blowing experience of dependence is our gratitude. The spiritual practice of gratitude incites us to see all of the interconnected parts and to say thank you for every one of them. None of them make up the whole, but all of them together have created this wild, wonderful life we can't seem to get enough of. It's possible to see me as Pollyanna, to hear cliches like attitude of gratitude as dismissive of the depth of pain also intertwined in the human experience. A spirituality of gratitude doesn't neglect what's real. In fact, gratitude is often born of suffering. As someone who's been invited to accompany people through their most difficult moments, while experiencing that which is most bitter, I find it common for people to find something sweet. I wrote that line and then I was trying to come up with examples, and there's almost no way to describe those moments. They sound so small, but I'm guessing that you've experienced or witnessed it yourselves. It's those few moments inside deep grief when someone notes something small that feels okay. It's those "at least they" kind of statements. You know what I'm talking about? Those moments, those hints. It's a seed of hope standing in sharp relief. It's the oasis to which we can return. Not in any way a denial of what's real. It's an expansion, noting that all of it is real. That the pain and oppression and anxiety and grief are here, and that this is a large and complicated world that also offers us kindness and humor and healing, sometimes all tied up with each other. I'd like to read you a poem that speaks to me when I'm living in this tension of deep gratitude while holding very real suffering, which you should know is actually a common experience for me. Here's the poem. "It's perfect," I said one day, the thought coming out of nothing I knew, no one sitting beside me while driving home from the market. I said this without thinking, it seems, but could there be such a pure expression with no intention to express? The fields were incomparably green, the sky incomparably blue, lupine and poppies almost blared from the hillside. At least that's the way I thought it. "You were made for enjoyment," Ruskin said, "and the world is filled with things you will enjoy, but every day I stumble over cries I can't still. The world is suffering." Say it twice and it's not the same suffering. The world is suffering. Disease, eviction, envy, grief, loneliness, rejection, dementia, judgment, self-judgment, when those I love may not love each other or me. Anger, suffocation, helplessness, this helplessness, my suffering of choice at the moment, my friend's daughter, the pianist, whose index finger lost to sarcoma I can't replace, my daughter, whose breast I can't replace, my dear friends, whose murdered son I can't replace. All over which I am at this moment suffering, though they may be at this moment not. Closer to home, I pull off the side of the road, staunched by the fleeting, incomparable beauty of the world in which everything happens. Oh, to know the incomparable beauty of the world in which everything happens. And we can. It is right here for us to know. Gratitude, whether we commit to it as an ongoing spiritual practice or just something we dip our toes into periodically, is mind expanding and mood altering. This isn't about the denial of suffering or what I call toxic positivity. I'm not suggesting we neglect what's real, but making the choice to shift out of our existential pain and into a new frame is often how we gather strength for the long journey before us. Gratitude can become the foundation of a life sourced by joy, and it happens without having to do much of anything. Just pay attention, just see what's real. What's real for you right now? Right this minute. Can you be grateful for your fingers? For your neck? For your skin? Are you wearing something comfortable? Is there something in your pocket you're going to need today? Are there people in this room for whom you can be grateful? On whom you know you are dependent, if only because we need each other to make this room happen. Victoria Stafford wrote a poem in which she asks, "What would you do? How holy and wild and magnificent would be your response if you noticed that things are exactly as they are? If you noticed the glory of this world, this planet, and all these people we've been given the grace to share our lives with, what would you do? What can we do? What should we do?" There is, of course, so much, so many opportunities to respond to all of what we've been given, to respond in gratitude for kindness, for forgiveness, for openness, for generosity, for the magic of all the atoms gathering together to give us life. There are ways to orient our lives as if we know the depth of all we've been given, ways to pay attention, ways to take our gratitude to the streets, sustaining and supporting all that's holy and wild and magnificent. And sometimes, all I can do, all I can conjure, all I need to do is to say aloud at any given moment, "Thank you, thank you, thank you."